He coached an Olympic champion, built a $400 million program that crashed in scandal, resigned in disgrace, and somehow made it back to power 11 years later. Anil Roberts is one of the most controversial figures in Trinidad and Tobago politics. His story is wild, filled with glory, shame, scandal, and an incredible comeback that nobody saw coming. This is a man who went from national hero to political outcast, and then clawed his way back to the cabinet. But the question everyone asks is simple: how did he do it, and should he have been allowed to return? Let's start at the beginning. Before Anil Roberts ever thought about politics, he was a swimming coach. Not just any coach, but one of the best in the Caribbean. His claim to fame came in 2004 when he coached George Bovell III to win a bronze medal at the Athens Olympics. This was massive for Trinidad and Tobago. Bovell became the first and only swimmer from the country to ever win an Olympic medal. When Bovell touched the wall in third place in the 200-meter individual medley, the entire nation celebrated. They even declared a national holiday. And standing right there in Athens, watching his athlete make history, was Anil Roberts. Bovell himself credits Roberts with getting him through that race. Before the final, Bovell was nervous, injured, and doubting himself. His shoulder was hurt from a car accident. He had already competed in 6 races. He was exhausted, but Roberts knew how to handle him. He called in Bovell's Auburn University teammate Jeremy Knowles to pump him up. Knowles drew a hammer on Bovell's arm, a symbol that reminded him he was a warrior. That moment changed everything. Bovell went out and won bronze, and Anil Roberts became known as the coach who delivered Trinidad's greatest swimming moment. After that success, Roberts had options. He could have stayed in coaching, built a career training more Olympic athletes, but he wanted something bigger. He wanted to change Trinidad and Tobago from the inside. So in 2010, when the People's Partnership Coalition won the general election, Roberts jumped into politics. He ran for the seat of Dabadi/Omira, representing the Congress of the People, a partner in the coalition. He won the seat, and just days later, on May 29, 2010, Prime Minister Kamla Persad-Bissessar appointed him Minister of Sport and Youth Affairs. He was living the dream. Olympic coach turned government minister. It looked like the perfect fairy tale. Roberts had big plans. He wanted to use sports to fight crime, to give young men from rough neighborhoods a chance at a better life. So he created the LifeSport program. The idea was simple: pay young men, including those involved in gangs and crime, to participate in sports and education programs. Give them money, keep them off the streets, teach them skills, and hopefully break the cycle of violence. On paper, it sounded noble. The government poured money into it. Lots of money. Eventually, the program would cost taxpayers over 400 million Trinidad and Tobago dollars. That's roughly 60 million US dollars. But things went wrong. Very wrong. By 2014, whispers started spreading that the program was corrupt. People were saying that money was disappearing. Equipment was being stolen. Contracts were being handed out to people with criminal connections. The media started digging, and what they found was shocking. One contractor, a man named Adolphus Daniel, was paid $34 million to provide education services to the young men in the program. But when investigators looked closer, they found that the education was never delivered. Daniel got $34 million for doing basically nothing. And he wasn't the only one. There were procurement breaches, fraud, theft, and connections to criminal gangs, including the Jamaat al-Muslimin, a militant Muslim organization. Prime Minister Kamla Persad-Bissessar ordered an audit. When the results came back in July 2014, she was furious. She went on television and said she was disillusioned, disappointed, and distressed by the level of deception and dishonesty in the program. She announced that LifeSport was being shut down immediately. And then she said something that made headlines. She accepted the resignation of Sports Minister Anil Roberts. Here's where it gets interesting. Roberts didn't want to resign. In his resignation letter, he wrote that he was being forced out based on what he called misinformation in the public domain. He claimed he did absolutely nothing wrong. He said his name was never mentioned in the audit report. He insisted he was resigning only because of public pressure, not because he was guilty of anything. But nobody believed him. The public was angry. The opposition was calling for his head. Even his own cabinet colleagues were turning against him. One day after sending his resignation letter, Roberts held a press conference. He looked devastated. His 22-year-old wife Chandel, who was 25 weeks pregnant at the time, stood beside him. He said politics was a filthy game where facts and truth had no place. He blamed the pressure from the public, from the opposition, and from his own party. He said the Prime Minister called him and told him she knew he did nothing wrong, but she had to accept his resignation anyway because of political pressure. Roberts didn't just resign as minister. He also resigned as the Member of Parliament for Dabadi/Omira. This was huge. He was walking away from everything. His political career appeared to be over. He became one of 20 people from the People's Partnership government to lose their positions over corruption scandals during that four-year administration. It was a record for any government in Trinidad and Tobago's history, but here's the thing about Anil Roberts: he never accepted that he did anything wrong. For years, he maintained his innocence. He said he could be investigated up, down, left, right, and they would find nothing. And technically, he had a point. The audit report never directly named him as being involved in the fraud. It pointed to problems within the Ministry of Sport and the Sport Company of Trinidad and Tobago, but not specifically to Roberts himself. In 2020, a court even quashed the audit report, ruling that it was flawed because the auditors didn't follow proper procedures. They didn't allow the relevant departments to respond to the findings before publishing the report. Roberts and his supporters claimed this vindicated him. His critics said it was just a technicality, and that the corruption was still real even if the audit was thrown out. Through all of this, Roberts never disappeared. He stayed visible. He stayed loud. He became a media personality, hosting a television sports show called Spock, which was one of the most popular talk shows in Trinidad. He also hosted a radio show and later a social media show called Douglar Politics. He used these platforms to stay relevant, to attack his enemies, and to keep his name in the public eye. And slowly, he started rebuilding his political career. In 2020, the United National Congress, led by Kamla Persad-Bissessar, lost the general election to the People's National Movement. Roberts was appointed as an opposition senator, a position that put him back in parliament. He wasn't elected, but he was back. He used his time in the Senate to be a thorn in the side of the government. He asked tough questions, made fiery speeches, and reminded everyone that he was still a fighter. Then in 2025, everything changed again. The United National Congress won the general election on April 28, defeating the People's National Movement. Kamla Persad-Bissessar became Prime Minister again, and she started putting together her cabinet. Roberts had wanted to run for a seat in the House of Representatives. He tried to get selected as the candidate for the constituency of St. Joseph, but the party didn't choose him. It looked like he would be left out. But on May 3, 2025, Persad-Bissessar surprised everyone. She appointed Anil Roberts as a senator and gave him the position of minister in the Ministry of Housing. He was back in the cabinet. 11 years after resigning in disgrace, he was a government minister again. The appointment shocked people. Critics were furious. They said it was a slap in the face to anyone who cared about corruption and accountability. They asked how a man who presided over a $400 million scandal could be trusted with government responsibilities again. They pointed out that the LifeSport investigation was still ongoing, with police still looking into what happened. But Persad-Bissessar defended her decision. She said Roberts had been cleared by the court ruling that quashed the audit. She said he deserved a second chance. And she reminded people that in politics, loyalty matters. Roberts had stood by her in the unseen through thick and thin, and she was rewarding that loyalty. Roberts himself was thrilled. In his first public statements as minister, he made it clear he wasn't going to be quiet or apologetic. In December 2025, during a Senate debate on the finance bill, he went on the attack against the opposition PM. He predicted that the Tobago People's Party would sweep the upcoming Tobago House of Assembly elections. He dismissed PM senators who criticized the UNC government, saying nothing they brought back from their political graveyard would help them. He was confident, aggressive, and unapologetic. The old Anil Roberts was back. Now let's talk about his personal life, because it's been just as dramatic as his political career. Roberts got married in January 2014, just months before his political downfall. His wife was Chandel Nichols, a young woman who was born in 1992, making her 21 years old when they got married. Roberts was in his mid-40s at the time. The wedding took place in St. Lucia at the Landings Resort, and it was attended by close friends and family. George Bovell III, his former Olympic athlete, was his best man. The couple seemed happy, and later that year, they were expecting their first child, but their marriage would be tested in ways they never imagined. Just months after the wedding, Roberts resigned from his ministerial position. He was suddenly unemployed, disgraced, and under investigation. Scandal stood by him during that difficult press conference, visibly pregnant and supportive. They went on to have children together, and Roberts often spoke about how his wife was his rock during the hardest times of his life. He said she always told him he believed in people too much, that he was too much of a team player. She warned him that not everyone in politics had his back. She was right. There have also been rumors and scandals surrounding Roberts' personal life over the years. Without going into unnecessary details, his name has been linked to various controversies beyond just the LifeSport scandal. But through it all, he and Scandal have remained together, at least publicly. Roberts has other children from before his marriage, and he's spoken about how important his family is to him. Despite everything, he always comes back to the idea that family keeps him grounded. Now, about the money. There have been claims that Anil Roberts has a net worth of around $8 million. However, I need to be clear, there are no credible sources that confirm this figure. Unlike some politicians whose wealth is documented through property records, business dealings, or official disclosures, Roberts' financial situation remains largely private. What we do know is that he's been involved in media work, including hosting television and radio shows, which would have brought in income during his years out of government. He's also described himself as a businessman at various points, but whether he's worth $8 million, more or less, is impossible to say with certainty. The number gets thrown around online, but nobody has been able to verify it. What we can say is that Roberts has lived a comfortable life. He's traveled extensively, been part of high-profile events, and maintained a public presence that suggests financial stability, but without official records. Any claims about his exact net worth should be taken with caution. Roberts also has a master's in business administration with a concentration in public administration from Heriot-Watt University's Edinburgh Business School. This shows that he's not just a coach and a politician, but someone who's invested in his education and professional development. He's smart, strategic, and knows how to position himself for success. That education has served him well, especially in navigating the complex world of government and public administration. As Minister in the Ministry of Housing in 2025, Roberts is now responsible for helping address Trinidad and Tobago's housing crisis. Thousands of families are waiting for homes, and the ministry has a massive backlog of applications. Roberts will need to work with the substantive Minister of Housing, David Lee, and another minister in the ministry, Philip Edward Alexander, to deliver results. It's a challenging portfolio, and critics are watching closely to see if he can handle it without another scandal. Roberts is also still involved in swimming. He continues to be recognized as the coach who helped George Bovell win Olympic bronze. Even after all the political drama, that achievement can never be taken away from him. Bovell himself has spoken warmly about Roberts over the years, crediting him with understanding how to peak athletes for major competitions. That relationship, that moment in Athens in 2004, remains the highlight of Roberts' career outside of politics. So what's the legacy of Anil Roberts? It's complicated. To his supporters, he's a man who was unfairly destroyed by a flawed audit and political enemies. They see him as someone who had a good idea with LifeSport, but was let down by corrupt people around him. They believe he deserves his comeback, and that he's proven his loyalty and resilience. To his critics, he's the face of government corruption and waste. They see him as someone who presided over a $400 million disaster that hurt taxpayers and damaged the country's reputation. They believe his return to government is proof that Trinidad and Tobago's political system rewards loyalty over accountability. The truth probably lies somewhere in between. Roberts was the minister in charge when LifeSport collapsed. Whether he personally stole money or not, he was responsible for overseeing the program. The fact that so much fraud happened under his watch raises serious questions about his judgment and management abilities. At the same time, the court ruling that quashed the audit shows that the process used to investigate him was flawed. In law, that matters, but here's what's undeniable: Anil Roberts is a survivor. He went from the highest highs, coaching an Olympic medalist and becoming a cabinet minister, to the lowest lows, resigning in disgrace and being accused of corruption. And yet, 11 years later, he's back in the cabinet. He's back in power. He's back in the spotlight. That takes skill, determination, and a thick skin. Whether you love him or hate him, you can't ignore him. As Trinidad and Tobago moves forward, the question is whether Roberts will use his second chance to deliver results or whether history will repeat itself. Will he help solve the housing crisis and prove his critics wrong? Or will there be new scandals, new controversies, new reasons to question his judgment? Only time will tell. But one thing is certain: Anil Roberts is not going away quietly. He's here to stay, and he's determined to write the final chapter of his story on his own terms. Subscribe now to uncover more shocking political comebacks that nobody saw coming.